Hey, welcome to the Uncensored Unprofessor. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for wanting to tune in and exercise your Christian thinking, your Christian brain a little bit. Today I want to think with you about architecture, shared public space, the power of architecture, the impact that architecture has upon who we are. Why? Well, the truth is we don't live nowhere. We don't live in an invisible or empty atmosphere called space. We don't live in outer space. We don't even live in some hidden inner space. We live on earth. That means we live in bodies, and our bodies, which is to say ourselves, are impacted and shaped, valued and evaluated and steeped in the spaces that surround us. But first, I want to give a word to the Cali wise. If you live in SoCal down in the OC, as so many millions of you listeners do, and you need some roof repair work or you need a new roof, maybe you have a commercial building that needs a new roof, call Gallerini Roofing, 714-244-6567. They've been in business for over 3 decades, so they've done many different kinds of jobs: homes, restaurants, churches, commercial buildings, skating rinks. They can handle your much-needed roofing job, and so they'll do that with professionalism and skill. Give Gallerini Roofing a call. Again, the number's 714-244-6567. They're licensed and insured. They have outstanding integrity. Give them a call, 714-244-6567. Gallerini Roofing is an amazing sponsor of UU University. Think of it like this with me. Why do people want to live in a clean and green and secure, a dotted with parks kind of neighborhood versus a trash-strewn, polluted, crime-ridden, degraded and bedraggled neighborhood? Among the many reasons is beauty. People enjoy, they crave to live in spaces that are beautiful. Ghettos are almost never beautiful. Neighborhoods overrun by gangs are never beautiful. I've never seen one. I've certainly never read about one, because neighborhoods overrun by gangs that are beautiful don't exist. No, the truth is we human beings, we creatures whom God formed out of the dust, we are still shaped by the earth. We're still shaped by the dust, the space, the stuff, the form that surrounds us. Even though evangelicals today tend toward the Gnostic, where we think that only our spirit or our soul or maybe our heart matters, so that what the uptake of that is that only the conversion of individual souls matter, but we don't think about how civilization matters or the peaceful, fruitful existence of people living together matters in the kingdom of God. Even though evangelicals tend toward the Gnostic, the truth remains. We are, all of us, profoundly impacted by the earth, the dust, the space, the form, environment, mood, design that surrounds us. And we may attend aesthetically empty churches, but we passionately care about how we decorate our homes. We may say physical space at church doesn't matter, but we take the regular time to wash our cars. We may say to one another that how church buildings look and appear don't matter as buildings, but we want our homes to look inviting and orderly. I mean, some of us are intentional about the placement of dinner settings, but then we think that public space is of no importance. That against the fact that we weekly weed and mow our lawns. We think it doesn't matter. We try to have it both ways. Today I'm trying to say, no, it doesn't work like that. Now, in past shows, I've criticized graffiti. It's not just that graffiti is 99% of the time, some kind of aesthetic blight, right? You'll see gang tags, symbols, names, foul symbols. You see them as territorial markings. We see cursing, foul language on public edifices. It's not just that, it's that graffiti vandals have no right to violate the form. What do I mean when I'm saying form? Oh, the walls of businesses and homes, the concrete on bridges or overpasses, train cars, sidewalks, park restrooms, bathroom walls, right? Graffiti vandals have no right to violate the form that does not belong to them. They don't own that form. And again, yes, I'm thinking of physical space, walls, billboards, the physical space that the graffiti vandal violates. And it's not his. It's usually a him, a he, right? It's not his property to mar. It's not his property to mark or efface. But it's also that graffiti violates the shared space that we, the public, we, the community, occupy. Graffiti vandals go and make ugly the space in which we all have to live, so they should not be celebrated. It truly makes me heartsick when graffiti vandals are feted as stars. They get written about in magazines and online articles. I mean, Banksy is perhaps the most infamous, they would say famous, I say infamous graffiti artist, graffiti vandal in Europe. Years ago, there was a guy in New York City who went by the name Seen, S-E-E-N. It breaks my heart when those guys are celebrated as stars because they are instead public space vandals. They pollute and mar and make ugly the space that we all have to live in and do business in and live our lives inside of. And so, too, am I going to think with you today about architecture. The truth is, we love beautiful, enchanting, gorgeous architecture, right? I mean, people from all over the planet, they save money, they work hard for maybe years on end. They save money to travel to Europe to see the architecture that Christians, church people, Christians built over the course of some 12 to 13 centuries. There are towns and cities where a community worked for 500 or 600 years on a separate building to develop and raise up that cathedral. And that span of committed endeavor alone rivets my imagination. People, for generations, in the same area, the same town, people were committed to a single task for 6 centuries on end. Wow. We have nothing. We have zero of that kind of shared vision today. Nothing. But still, people from all over the planet travel to Europe for vacations to enjoy historic Christian architecture. And it's mostly Christian. There's some secular, but it's mostly Christian architecture that people want to go to see. Me, I've had the privilege of having gone to Italy 5 times. On different trips, I've stood at Trevi Fountain in Rome. It's so beautiful. I just soak there in the beauty of the setting there. The fountain, the sculptures that are down in and around and above the water, the in situ, the in the situation, in the setting, assemblage, water and history and lighting and movement. It's so beautiful. It grasps you as you encounter it. Huge throngs of people crowd around it to see it. Probably do so especially at night, or at least I thought it was even more beautiful at night. I've had gelatos. I've sat there with a gelato in my hand where me and Tanya would just sit there and bask in the beauty of the sight. I've got there earlier in the morning to get a cappuccino, to sit at one of those little cafe tables or on the stone steps near the fountain and just sit there drinking my cappuccino, looking at the beauty of it all. I had a meal once at a restaurant above the fountain just to sit there for an extended period because it was glorious and peaceful. I would even say it's ennobling. Makes people think better, envision better, imagine better. Or the same is true for me with my favorite square. It's not really a square. It used to be a Roman racetrack. It's called Piazza Navona Square, Navona meeting place there in Rome. It has the Four Rivers fountain. I've wandered round and round and round that fountain, just taking pictures, just stopping and looking at it. It's stunning. It's so worth just standing there looking at that fountain alone. But then there's the music in the square and the artwork and the sound of happy people meeting together. There's the whole piazza is filled with exquisite detail. Sitting there, I've had several meals in that square by myself and with others. You enjoy the majesty of craftsmanship. Just talking about it makes me want to go there again. I want to have another plate of spaghetti. I want to sit there and visit with friends and soak in the beauty and, soak in the elegance of history. I want to relish the genius of past art masters and sculptors. And I'm saying all of that to say human beings love space. We love nice surroundings. We love good architecture. And then if the students, the many students who've gone on the trips with me know that my most favoritist thing to do on vacations on those foreign study abroad trips is visit churches. I like to walk in and stand there or sit down and just feel what the building. I want to feel what the architecture, I want to feel what the community is saying to me through the artwork, through the architecture. Because I've learned that they all communicate something. They all, in varied ways, good or bad, make me feel something. They all say or shout or whisper, and it can be all three or it can be one of those. They'll whisper something of value to me. So I go into churches, even here in America. It's not that I just want to see a historic artifact or something famous. I want to go in and feel what the space, what the architect, what the church community, what the pastor, the board, I want to feel what they designed there. I want to understand what they want me to feel. 2 different times for ecumenical meetings with Lutherans, I had the privilege of going to Strasbourg, France. Strasbourg has an amazing cathedral there. Whether you see it from the outside, maybe especially when you go on the inside, you get the sense of eternity. And like no other cathedral I've ever been in, cathedral in Strasbourg makes me feel darkness. It was so weird looking up into that chamber and up into the darkness of God. Was this meant to mirror the darkness of Moses on Mount Sinai when he encountered God? I don't know, but it made me feel so small. I was there in the presence of the monstrosity of God's eternal existence, and it just made me feel my own tininess. And on both trips, I got to stand there, sit there, even from the outside, and look up into the spire of that cathedral, and I would feel the aesthetic weight of the structure pressing down on me. And all of that reminded me that I'm just a blip in the grand scheme of God. We think we're so important, but compared to his eternity, we're just a blip. And then when I learned that the cathedral in Strasbourg was built across the years of 1015 to 1439. 1015 to 1439. 424 years, that seizes my imagination. When I realized that structure has been standing there silently shouting to the community about the glory and majesty of God now for 600 years since it was completed, or for 1,000 years since they started building it, it grips me. I'm stopped cold. I'm reminded that there were people, a whole civilization. There were a people who loved God and who had an imagination that I sure don't. People who had back then a shared commitment to the eternal nature of God that my own era has utterly zero grasp regarding. Amazing what that one building made me feel. Or another trip that really stands out in my memory is when we went to Kyiv. I took students to Kyiv in Ukraine a couple times, and on one of those trips we visited the Orthodox monasteries there outside the town near the river. Now I got to tell you, it wasn't my immediate own version of Christianity, but wow. The aesthetic there was overwhelmingly powerful. It made me feel again a sense of the holy. These monks had their residence down in caves. They had caves where Christianity was preserved for the sake of the nation for centuries on end by austere men who lived lives in caves down there of extreme sacrifice. And it's kind of cool to realize that those monks, they outlasted the all-seeing, all-powerful Soviet Union. So cool. And the visit to those caves was breathtaking. And the Eastern Orthodox, they still revere the sacrifice and holiness of those monks here many centuries later because, among other things, the power of aesthetics is great. And me, I could go on and on about cathedrals and churches that I visited and that I love and that I loved going back to over and over and over and over. Churches built all over Europe, all of them built to attest to the existence of the transcendent God who abides. Wow, the God who abides even when we do not. Like I say, for me, being able to go and experience and witness and sit and worship and pray in those churches was majestic. I was there in buildings where entire generations of communities wanted to mark their space in the region. They wanted to mark it out for the glory of God. Entire sweeping regions full of people wanted their space, their horizon. They wanted to be that when you looked across the horizon, you would see that tower, that cathedral, that spire. They wanted you to know that where they lived was characterized by belief in the existence and worship of the biblical God. And today, America has almost none of that. It's not in America's DNA. It's not in American evangelicals. It's not who American Christians are today. But not only. In his mesmerizing book, The Soul of the World, you can find it on Amazon, The Soul of the World, philosopher Roger Scruton says that beautiful architecture is a testament not only of the living. No, beautiful architecture builds on the past. Beautiful architecture represents the past. Beautiful architecture echoes and attests to the past. But that architecture was also built with an eye toward the future. People who spent 500 or 600 years building a cathedral were honoring the people of the past. I mean, you can go and you'll see those European cathedrals will have statues or plaques or memorials, if not also relics of important, significant, sacrificial people from the past. So the people of the past are honored in such a way that their lives are brought to bear on the present. The past isn't tossed out in the window of passing fancies of today. The past isn't discarded in those cathedrals all across Europe as being irrelevant for today. The past, oh holy Jesus, is not trampled on in favor of the here today, gone tomorrow fads that so characterize American life. Oh, One of the things that was a stab in my eye across my 25 years of teaching at a sort of Christian university was that every last fad that rolled through would be embraced as the newest, coolest thing instead of just focusing on building disciples for the glory and mission of Christ. Oh, so the past matters in beautiful architecture. But Scruton says that beautiful architecture is also mindful of the future. The community together erects a building or a fountain or a bridge or a town center. They build something that will impact and shape future citizens of that town or region or city. So they take a long view. A long view is taken with regard to buildings and architecture, or was taken. Today, again here in America, not so much, hardly. I mean, think with me. Have you ever been to New York City? Yeah, I've had the fun, the privilege, the pleasure of going there 3 times. It was fun. It was exciting. It was epic, going to all these famous sites and places and squares and buildings, and mostly the architecture in New York City was an architectural soul killer. I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds of square blocks of skyscrapers. They have tall towers that keep you looking up, but when you do look up, your eye goes to nowhere. My last trip there, I'm pretty sure it was 2019, right before COVID broke out. On our last trip there, Tanya and I paid I think it was about $40 each to go up the 50 second. It took us 50 seconds on that elevator ride to go up to the top of the Freedom Tower. It's where it stands now, where the Twin Towers used to stand, right? And I think it's fun to know that I've gone to the top, as high as the public is allowed to go in that building, and look out over New York City, look out over New York State. I'm pretty sure where we were standing we were looking out over New Jersey. But there's not one thing about Freedom Tower that touches your soul. I didn't leave with any kind of encounter with transcendence or beauty or history or awesomeness. Why? Because the building has no design. It has no charm. It doesn't recall the past. It was put there ostensibly on the side of the Twin Towers to recall that horrific event, but nothing of the aesthetic moves you that way. There's no tribute to distinct eras gone by, generations gone by. Instead, what you get, whether you're in it or outside looking at it, is you get a dizzyingly tall metal and glass edifice. And it's an edifice that takes your eye, and so it takes your soul way up there to nowhere, to nothing. I'm sorry, it doesn't make me at all happy to say it, but Freedom Tower speaks of nothing. Or probably better, it speaks of the nothing that is the late 20th, early 21st century American collective soul, which is nihilism and emptiness and nothing. If I think about it, at best, the most, Freedom Tower is a tribute to power. We had the power to make a building so tall in New York City, and so we did. But it doesn't attest in any particular way, in any meaningful way, to the people who were murdered there. It doesn't attest to the beauty or sacrifice or work ethic of their lives. It doesn't speak to anything particularly American. It sure doesn't say anything about the past, and certainly it doesn't say anything with regard to the future. I mean, sorry, but other than being one of the tallest skyscrapers, as I'm speaking, I went and looked. It's number 7 in the world for being the tall building. It's 1,776 feet tall. Other than that, it doesn't suggest anything. Well, Like I say, it may suggest power, but that's about all. It's sorry to say it, it's an ugly building. Do you think I'm being unfair? Here's what philosopher Roger Scruton has to say about modern skyscrapers in general. Quote, "Today's towers have no orientation, no privileged approach as you're moving toward them, no gestures or expressions that conduct you into their vicinity. They face nothing, welcome nothing, smile and give nothing to no one. Hence we cannot stand comfortably in their presence. Nor is that all. The modern tower is in reality the very opposite of a temple's column, for the modern tower lacks everything that gives meaning that you find in a column. The modern tower has neither base nor capital. It avoids moldings and string courses. I went and looked. String courses are horizontal bands of color or varied stone that help to make a building distinct. Modern towers, skyscrapers don't have that. Modern skyscrapers avoid ornaments as though they were crimes, Scruton says, and its surface is devoid of significant shadow and therefore devoid of light, for light needs shade itself to be seen," close quote. Again, thinking of the cathedral in Strasbourg or St. Peter's or Westminster Abbey in London, they all had shadow so that the light played off them in beautiful different ways that made you experience and feel and know different things because there was shadow and shade and light. But the tower has none of that. Scruton says the tower escapes upward as though fleeing from itself, but it concludes in nothing. And although the tower is tall, vertical, and slim, it doesn't really stand before us. It doesn't really stand before us, for it has no posture and no repose. Its vertical extent expresses no vertical order. Close quote. Now look, I could keep going with Scruton's scathing critique of modern architecture because he's savage, right? He is. He's right to point out that it's dull and lifeless, expressionless. Serving only utility, modern skyscrapers do not cause anyone to travel the world to stand in their midst. That's not why folks go to New York City. It's not why I went. No. No one goes to New York City to say, let's just stand here and look at the skyscrapers for days on end. Nope. People go to the Big Apple to see Broadway shows filled with music, shows exploding with aesthetic. People go to New York City to see the Statue of Liberty, that emblem from the past that still speaks forth to today. She, the statue, with her own wondrous aesthetic. People go to New York City to walk through Central Park or to play there or to rest there, to relax there. People go to the Big Apple to eat any number of New York City foodie restaurants. Some people would go to New York to see the Yankees, but no one goes to New York City to view skyscrapers as skyscrapers. The aesthetic is too empty. And so it is with the rest of modern architecture. No one from around the world flies to any modern American city to gaze in wonder at that city's specific architecture. Why? Because it's lifeless. It serves utility only. And hear me clearly, I'm not against utility. I like that stuff works here in America. It's just that I don't think utility and beauty need to be opposed. Where am I going with all this? Well, I don't think beauty and utility need to be opposed. But for the umpteenth time here on the UU, as the uncensored unprofessor, I'm pleading with believers to incorporate beauty into their worldviews. I'm pleading with you to incorporate beauty into your daily reality, into our worship of God and our service of Jesus and our co-partnering with the Holy Spirit who breathes our lives. Here's a current story of where this goes for me. A few weeks ago, Tanya and I attended a graduation for our son-in-law. He just completed further training. Even though he's already a deputy with the county sheriff here in Ada County, he's trained further to become a member of the county sheriff's transport team. So he's going to be with a team of policemen moving criminals from prison to the courthouse or the hospital or a clinic or some such, or they'll be moving prisoners from one state to the other state, say, I don't know, Utah to Idaho, having to go on planes and buses and the transport team moving prisoners. And at this ceremony we attended, there were 23 officers, both new and those who were being upgraded. They were being honored. The service itself was lovely. And the ceremony was held at a local Spudlandia church. It was a new church. And when Tanya and I were walking into the church for the service, I commented to her that it looked like we were walking into a tavern. It had the same design. Exposed wood studs, had the same nondescript metal like corrugated metal wall coverings. It had the same bare concrete floors. It had lights hanging down from exposed wooden beams up above. And all through the new big building there was no artwork. There was no beautifully designed windows, no stained glass. There were a couple of bare wooden crosses inside the gathering hall. And all of that's against even my own youthful past in church. I mean, this is a swift change that has happened here in the United States, right? I mean, in the past, the gathering hall for the church was more decidedly named the sanctuary. But we don't really have sanctuaries today. In the past, we called them sanctuaries because sanctuaries were places for the sacred. Sanctuaries were places where the faithful would gather to worship in the presence of the Holy One, the living God. Sanctuaries are where sacred things happen. Sancta means holy. Sanctified, sancta, 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 saint, sancta. Sanctuaries are where sacred things happen. Things like weddings and funerals and water baptisms, worship services. You go into a sanctuary to receive the Lord's Supper, to join into prayer meetings. And traditionally, then, so it has gone for 2,000 years, sacred spaces are made sacred with the help of the aesthetic. When I was a kid, even our rural Oregon Assemblies of God church had a communion table. It was made out of what I remember was thick yellow oak. And the communion table had etched into its front side, kind of in either charred or black or maybe just dark, etched words that said, "Do this in remembrance of me." And around that communion table were rails. We referred to them as altars. And those altars were where people from the congregation could come up forward not only to receive the Lord's Supper, but where they could at times also be prayed with together by other people or the pastor or anointed for healing. All of that, even in my youth, was space marked out as sacred. And some of it availed itself of the aesthetic that shaped people. Some of it was intentional about shaping people's expectations of what would happen in that sacred space. The space itself reminded people that, hey, this is the holy place where we worship. I mean, oh man, back then, I'd get in trouble if I ran inside the church building. We all knew that church space was not the space for children's games. And it wouldn't just be my parents who would call me out or correct me. It would be other adult members of the community who would say, "Hey, Eddie, stop running. This is church." But back to this ceremony where we attended this new church in the Treasure Valley. It was, I'm sorry to say, it was an aesthetic black hole. And I'm speaking literally, not just figuratively. It was literally a sanctuary of black. The carpet on the stage was black. The curtains behind it were black. The wall behind it was black. I'm calling it a stage because it was decidedly not a pulpit. It was black, and I don't know. Was it black so that the multifaceted lighting would look cool during worship sets inside of all that black setting? I don't know, but it was horribly, awfully, emptily black. There was truly no aesthetic to speak of. It was an empty meeting room. It's true, yes, the padded chairs were comfortable. We used to call them pews. They were padded chairs. They were comfortable. I thought that was nice, but there was no aesthetic. There was nothing about the space that suggested Christ. There was nothing about the space that suggested Christians meet there, not in the sanctuary, meeting hall, not out in the hallway, foyer, nothing about it that said this is where Christians meet or where Christ is worshiped as Lord. There was nothing about the space that suggested this was a holy place for meeting with the God of creation. We come here to worship the God of eternity, our judge and creator, who is also our redeemer, our restorer, and the source of all healing. Nothing. There was nothing about the space here in a brand spanking new church in southern Idaho that said, hey, come and join us as disciples of the resurrected Christ. There was nothing that says we take the Holy Scriptures seriously. There was nothing that said, it's true, we're a community committed to the Jesus of Nazareth who was crucified for us on Golgotha. Nothing. There was nothing about the space that said, oh, Jesus Christ did so much for us. We just gotta give back to him. There was no sense of peace or gratitude. And I left that hour and 5-minute service overjoyed for my son-in-law. I'm really proud of him. No one wants to do hard work anymore. No one wants to sacrifice anymore. He's done both of that in spades, you guys. So I left the service overjoyed for him, but I left with yet again a broken heart for another ostensibly Christian community that just doesn't get it. And here's the deal. This is the truth. In 25 years, when that pastor, the pastor who's leader while the new meeting hall was being built, the pastor of today, when he retires, if statistics hold, that church will be at a 50% risk of dwindling and being sold and turned into a skating rink or a movie theater or a new Planet Fitness, a new Gold's Gym. Someone will lease it out for a judo training center. How? Wait, how? Why? What? The building reflects nothing of the past. The building says virtually nothing about the community that meets there now, that resides there now. Well, sorry. It says nothing except utility. We meet here. Come join us, 'cause we meet here. It says nothing about the future. It says nothing for future generations. It says nothing of meaning, even fitting an Idahoan or other kind of sensibility. It's just a nondescript building. It's a meeting center. It could be a convention hall, nothing sacred. It could be a meeting hall, there's nothing beautiful. It could be a courthouse, there's nothing memorable. There's nothing there that inspires wonder or joy or love, majesty, awe. There was zero of the holiness of God. There's nothing to express the beauty of our lives together in God. And hey, wow, lest it seem like I'm just landing on and tearing apart a new church building here in Idaho and shredding it, please know my critique is directed at the entire evangelical movement, broadly speaking. What truly is going to abide of us into the future? What will remain for the next 7 generations of evangelicalism? Evangelicalism where people, say 6 generations from now, what are they going to look back and say? What will they say of us? Wow, those people, those guys of the early 21st century, man, they knew the heart of Jesus. Look at what they made. Those people, their hearts were steeped in the fabric of eternity. Man, I wish I could have been alive when they were. No, it's not going to happen. Why? Why isn't that going to happen? Why is there zero possibility of that happening? Because brand new, vacuous, empty shells of exposed wooden beams and corrugated metal wall coverings, those kinds of meeting places will have by then been long repurposed as indoor shooting ranges or community youth centers. Some of them will be turned into apartment complexes or homeless shelters or a fine dining restaurant. There will have been no reason to preserve it as a church. Why is that? Because it's not a church. There, looking out, say in 2 generations, if it's that far, there will have been no reason to say, wow, cool, let's go visit that church in Caldwell, Idaho today. Because they knew the heart of Jesus. Let's go there and pray where they knew they were called to be faithful. They were called to be faithful clear until the day Jesus comes back. Let's go learn from them. Let's go worship and gather there. Let's go and be where they were when they built that. No. There's nothing about that building, or again, the tens of thousands of gathering centers, mostly just like it. There's nothing about that building that goes beyond the service of Lord utility. They're serving Lord utility instead of the Lord of the creation, Jesus of Nazareth. And it hurts me to say it, but there's no beauty. There's no architectural wonder. There's no architectural creativity. There's no joy. There's no sense of the past. Zero. And just as bad, again, there's no eye toward the future. Zero. Churches like this are rectangular turds of concrete and endless streaming walls of drywall. And I'm saying this out of a broken heart. I consider myself an evangelical. It's a broken heart that drives this. I'm not trying to be nerdy or erudite or even cultured. No one's ever accused me, Ed Rybarczyk, of being some sophisticate, some high cultured dude. But I am saying that we early 21st century evangelicals do not have the tiniest awareness of how space impacts people. Physical space shapes people. A holy atmosphere shapes people's imaginations. A historical commitment to who we were and will be can have a powerful impact upon human beings. We have no sense that we're in it for the long haul because we're not. We're here for the immediate, for the now, and that's all. But the truth is, physical space shapes and warps and twists and renews and replenishes and directs human souls, for good or bad. With all that in mind, my listeners, instead of all that, pursue beauty. Pursue the intentionality of beauty. choose to live beautiful lives. Take the long view. Recognize and realize that Jesus called us long-term. Recognize and realize that Jesus called us to make generational impacts, to make generational influences on the places and spaces where we live, because that's what he did. That's who he was. And that's how he has in part inspired Western civilization to survive and thrive here for 20 centuries. Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy. Lord Jesus, thank you for green on blue. Thank you for beauty. Thank you for the beauty that is ours through you. Hey, my listener, if you have feedback or critique or ideas, email me at uncensoredunprofessor@gmail.com. But thanks for tuning in and thinking with me about architecture and the power of physical space. Please, until next week, everyone go and turn on your beautiful God-given brains.